Hello, reporter room investigators. Come on in, come on in. I'm so sorry I'm late on this. I was the Brian Kohlberger. I just way underestimated how much I had to go through. I still didn't finish everything. I apologize profusely for being late. I'm glad you guys are here. Let's go ahead and get started on the Chris Watts case. Let me just grab this, so people know what we are talking about. And I just want to have something up here that just has his picture on it. So if somebody comes by, they know what we're talking about here. Okay. All right. Let's talk about it. Okay. Let me move myself here. All right. So come on in. Tell me where you're from. We're going to be talking about the Chris Watts case and Nicole Kessinger. Some of Chris Watts's most recent claims about Nicole Kessinger, his prison letters, and Nicole Kessinger's bizarre interview with law enforcement. Why was she lying? We have a lot of stuff to dig into, and I'm really curious to get your take on it. My name is Jessica Della Davies. I'm an investigative journalist, and my job is to investigate crimes, crime scenes, and potential suspects, and share with you how to do the same thing. If you have not subscribed to Reporter Room, it's free, so please do. Like, share, leave a comment, and know that everything I'm sharing with you is my opinion. Okay, so let's just dive right in here. We're going to be talking about NK's bizarre interview and some other stuff, but I want to start off talking about this creepy note that he wrote. Chris Watts he's in serving time in Dodge Correctional Institute in Wisconsin. He wrote a letter referring to Nicole Kessinger as a Jezebel. Now, what a Jezebel is it's an immoral woman who deceives people in order to get what she wants. And I think this is just another way for Chris Watts, in my opinion, to try to absolve himself for what he did. So to be clear, I just want to say from the outset, whatever you think that Nicole Kessinger's role was in all of this, and I do think there are some red flags, Chris Watts is where he belongs. He is behind bars. He did do away with his family, and he does deserve to be serving multiple life sentences for doing away with Bella, Cece, Shanann, and his unborn son, Nico. However, many people have asked whether NK should have also been held responsible, or at least been charged with obstruction of justice for lying to law enforcement about the multiple things, including when she first learned about Chris Watts, because we know she was Googling him. Her knowledge of Shanann, we know she was Googling Shanann too. All of her deleted text messages to Chris Watts. Her encouraging Chris Watts to do the same thing. Her telling one of her other friends, Charlotte, to delete her text messages. So I'm not saying whether or not Nicole had anything to do with what happened, but I do think there are some red flags. And I do wonder if she had any type of knowledge. And the reason I feel concerned about this is because she asked him. Now, she was the one that assigned the guys of where they went to these sites like Survey 319. So why was she asking Chris Watts for a picture to prove he was at Survey 319 that day? And why was her phone pinging in Fredericks that morning, the morning of the crimes? And the only reason we know about that is that this phone call with Jim. So was she putting pressure on him? She said she didn't know anything about this 111-minute phone call they had. And remember, this was the night before his family disappeared. And she was doing this interview with law enforcement 72 hours later. This is not like months have gone by. We're talking about a couple of days. So come on now. So I want to talk about the Jezebel comments, though, first, because I do think this is misogynistic on Chris Watts' part. And a lot of people have wondered, like, why was he, making these comments now? And this is just my opinion. Let me know if you have a different take on it. But I think he's seen the Menendez brothers and their bid to get a new trial for doing away with their parents. He's seen Scott Peterson case with the LA Innocence Project, and Scott Peterson was convicted of doing away with Lacey who was pregnant with his unborn son, Connor, when she disappeared. And he's already had his death sentence commuted in California because of law changes in California. But now he's, making a bid with the LA Innocence Project to get the case reopened. So I think that Chris Watts is looking at the Menendez brothers. He's looking at Scott Peterson and seeing them getting, a chance to maybe get out. And so he's, now willing to point the finger, in my opinion, at Nicole Kessinger. And I just want to say, for, my take on the Menendez brothers, my feeling is, I'm going to watch my words here, in case you have little ones in the room, but I think the Menendez brothers deserve to be where they are, in my opinion. I don't know what their parents did, but they were adults at this point. They certainly could have gone and reported it to law enforcement and, let justice take its course. They could have moved out. They could have moved away. They didn't. There was no reason to have to do away with their parents. They were grown up at this point. So, I don't know. I'm not as keen as some people are to see them get another to get out. I'm not. Yeah, I know they've been model prisoners, but what they did was just huge. And if people can see, well, if you commit a crime like this, you can get out at some point later. I don't know. What do you guys think? But I just don't think there was any need that they would have had to take out their parents at that point. They were grown men, capable of supporting themselves, capable of moving out, capable of going to law enforcement. But I think they got a lot of sympathy after the Netflix documentary. And it just does make me wonder if Chris Watts is eyeballing this Menendez case and the Scott Peterson case and thinking, you know what? Maybe I can get out of jail too. Maybe I can point the finger at Nicole Kessinger, absolve myself of all responsibility for my actions, and get out of jail. Because if this is my opinion, if Nicole Kessinger is a Jezebel, then so is Chris Watts. But he reportedly told his cellmate, Dylan Tallman, quote, "I was having an affair with this girl. I ended up in love with two women at the same time." But he did away with Shanann, so I'm not convinced he was in love with Shanann. I don't think he had feelings for anybody. But I don't know even if this is true or not, because Chris Watts has lied so much in this case. And then Dylan Tallman is a former inmate, and he wrote a book about the time he spent with Chris Watts. So was this just Dylan Tallman's way of trying to cash in on the Chris Watts case? What do you guys think? But Chris Watts reportedly also said it led to what happened. She's evil spirits like Jezebel. But Chris Watts is the one who did away with Shanann, Bella, Cece, and Nico. And then he was willing to let Shanann take the blame for the girls, trying to say that she did it, and then he just did it in response to what Shanann did. That's why he did away with her. So he was completely down with blaming Shanann for doing away with the girls, which we know that he did. He buried Shanann in a shallow grave, and then he put his girls, his precious little girls, into two separate oil tanks. So I do think that Chris Watts was obsessed with Nicole Kessinger. And I also think that Nicole Kessinger was obsessed with Chris Watts. I think she saw him on social media in Shanann's videos. And Shanann had her Facebook set to public. And in my opinion, this is just my opinion, I think that Nicole Kessinger decided to take the job at Anadarko to enter the lives of Chris and Shanann Watts. But Chris Watts has really had a lot to say now. He was silent about Nicole at the beginning, but he described her and said her flattering speech was like drops of honey that pierced my heart and soul, he penned. And I just think this is rich coming from him because he took out his whole family. I mean, he could have gotten his marriage back on track, even after having an affair with Nicole Kessinger. We know Shanann was trying to work it out with him. She was pregnant. She was in her mid-trimester. She was, 15 weeks in. So she was in her mid-trimester and, she wanted to have this child. I think she would have worked it out with him, but he rejected her. And instead, when he went to North Carolina, spent hours on the phone with Nicole Kessinger. And Nicole was shady too. She was sending him explicit photos of her in all kinds of poses for his secret calculator app. So she is not the innocent person that she portrays herself to be in the interview either, in my opinion. And she lied to law enforcement. And I do believe, and this is just my opinion, let me know if you have a different take, but I believe that was not charged with obstruction of justice because she made an immunity deal. She got an immunity deal because the law enforcement and the prosecution would not have known, DA Rourke would not have known that Chris Watts was going to take a plea deal. So they made a deal with her, ignored all the lies and inconsistencies, and made a deal. So Chris Watts also reportedly claimed to former inmate Tallman that NK told him to choose between her and his family. And I believe that this may have occurred during the 111-minute phone call. This very well could be true. She may have told him to choose. But that's different than, take out your whole family. Now and what's suspicious about her is that she claims she can't remember what they talked about during this 111-minute phone conversation, just 72 hours after. So that just doesn't pass the smell test, in my opinion. I think that she did probably pressure him to choose. And ultimately, he made the decision to do away with Shanann, Bella, Cece, and Nico. So I think this was more premeditated than just the night before. However, because of the photograph that I showed you guys during the last live stream, let me pull it up really quick. That he took of the doll with the sheet over it. Let me just show it really quick. Let me take this down for a second. Because of this photograph, this is why I believe now he tried to frame Shanann with this and told his parents, who I think, I'm sorry, but Cindy Watts, in my opinion, always looks like she smelled something bad. And the fact that she's like stood by this man, despite what he did to her grandchildren, is just, kind of hard to take it in. But Chris Watts took this photo and sent this photo to Shanann, and Shanann posted it on her Facebook. And I think this was his way of trying to set her up for what he did. And I think his parents were all in on it. They were all in. They were
communicating with me if there were any.
Perfectly happy to blame Shanann for all of this, in my opinion. Ronnie Watts, swallowed it hook, line, and sinker when Chris told them that, Shanann did away with the girls and he, had to do away with Shanann. So I think that picture that he sent, we know that sociopaths and psychopaths love to play games. And I think this photo was taken by Chris Watts and sent to Shanann. Shanann posted it on her Facebook, and he probably knew that she would. And then he was able to pretend to his parents that Shanann is the one that took it. And that somehow, and remember, he left his parents the note that if anything happened to him, that Shanann did it. And his parents, gobbled up this nonsense, hook, line, and sinker, because the apple didn't fall far from the tree, in my opinion. So I think the fact that Chris Watts took this photo shows some premeditation on his part. I think this was him signaling what he was planning to do. And I do believe, in my opinion, that NK did pressure him. I believe that part of his statement to choose between her and his family. So let's go through the red flags of NK, because there are so many red flags. So let's just go through those. First of all, I just want to say that she's out and about. I showed you guys photos during our last live stream last week. And I just want to be clear. I'm not saying Chris Watts should be, is not culpable. He is. But what I am saying is that he's already serving 5 life sentences for what he did. And she is serving nothing. She walked away from all of this. We saw her in a pictures that I showed last week that she's been spotted in Montana attending a funeral. So she has resurfaced a little bit. So Nicole Kessinger was educated and intelligent. So this interview where she does the poor, woe is me, helpless act feels so phony, in my opinion. I mean, she graduated from college in 2013 from Colorado State University. So just 5 years before the crime, she got her bachelor's degree in geology. So this ditzy and then her silly, childish giggles, which are, I think, disturbing, and phony baloney. Um, so I do think that Nicole Kessinger was searching out Chris and Shanann Watts the year before, back in 2017. And I think she found Shanann's Facebook that was set to public. She saw the nice house. She saw the nice looking guy standing in the background. And I think she made a decision to take the job at Anadarko and enter Chris Watts's life. So was NK jealous of Shanann? We know she was involved in a multi-level marketing company, and we know that Shanann was very successful in her multi-level marketing company, at least initially. We all know, at least most of us do, that MLMs don't work out for most people long term unless you're at the very top of that pyramid. So did Nicole Kessinger see Shanann doing well with her MLM, Thrive, Lavelle, and see Shanann with her husband and her beautiful children and her big, beautiful house and get jealous? And or just got a crush on Chris over the internet, got obsessed with him. And did she decide she was going to enter the life of Chris Watts? And by doing so, did she set into motion a cascade of events that ended up with Shanann, Bella, Cece, and Nico all losing everything, being unalived? So there are extreme in obsessional jealousy. And we know this applies to NK, in my opinion, because she was searching Shanann on the internet and she lied about it. And I think the fact that she was willing to lie about it makes me think there's more to it. We know on July 4th that Chris Watts said he had to talk NK down after she came over to their house. And she was also sending Chris Watts information on getting a new apartment. She was sending him inappropriate photographs. While she told law enforcement that he was supposed to be reconciling with Shanann, that she wanted him to reconcile with Shanann. She wanted him to work it out, but she's sending him these images of her. I think it's really, really crappy. So I think that NK was being very controlling. She was counting his macros. She was trying to decide where he was going to live. And I think, Chris Watts has a type. I think NK probably came closer to how his mother was. She knew how much Chris Watts's mortgage payment was. And then her requesting proof that he was at Survey 319 on the day that he takes out his whole family, her phone pinging in Fredericksburg, where she didn't work or live, the morning of the crimes, was all very controlling behavior, in my opinion. So I think that at the very least, she was checking in on him around 6 a.m. on August 13th to see what was going on. Now, what she had been told in that 111-minute phone call is what we don't know. So, but lots of lies. So let's talk about those lies. We know NK claimed in law enforcement interviews that she did not know Chris Watts was married, because he wasn't wearing a wedding ring around her. And this would have been in May or June, leading up to August 13th of 2018 when the crimes occurred. But we know this is not true because of the searches that she did on Chris and Shanann. And I think that she would have known Shanann was pregnant also, because Shanann was going to have a baby reveal. They were going to reveal the gender of the baby. And Chris Watts is a common name, but Shanann, spelled SHANANN, is not a typical name. So the fact she was looking up Shanann Watts is a big red flag. So I think she knew Chris Watts was married. We know that there was emails where she said that. And we also know she was searching. She said, the man I'm having an affair with will leave his wife. She was searching wedding dresses. So she knew Chris Watts was married. And I think all of the lying that she did, and the fact that she, that law enforcement didn't push back on any of the lying the way they did with Chris Watts and the way they did with Trent, the weird guy that was claiming to have a relationship with Chris, who turned out to not be the truth, Trent Bolt. The fact that they pushed back on Trent, but not on her, I thought was wild, absolutely wild. So did Nicole Kessinger have any guilty knowledge ahead of time that would have prevented this? Could she have stopped this cascade of events? So a lot of people have talked about the insurance fraud scheme, and there's been a lot of questions as to what, NK and Chris Watts were planning to do. We know that NK was a safety officer with Anadarko, so she would have understood that Survey 319 could have been taken out in a giant explosion. And we all saw neighbor Nate's video of Chris Watts loading a gas can up into his truck the morning of the crimes. We know that Chris Watts ran out of time because Shanann's flight was delayed by a couple of hours. She was coming in from a business trip in Arizona, coming back into Colorado. It was delayed, so she ended up getting back to the house later than expected. So did he simply run out of time? And there's been a lot of questions as to why that sheet was left out in the open in the field, why it wouldn't have been buried with Shanann and Nico, and why the girls, Bella and Cece, were placed in two separate oil tanks. Why not just put them in with Shanann? I think it was one more level of cruelty on Chris Watts's part to separate the girls. They couldn't, and from Shanann, that they couldn't even be together. But I also think that there may have been something else supposed to happen at Survey 319. And maybe that's why she wanted pictures of him, that he was there. She claimed in this interview that I have up on the screen that she didn't recall anything about the 111 minutes that she spoke to Chris. And this would have been one of their last phone conversations before his family was done away with. So I find it really hard to believe that she did not remember what happened. She also claimed that she wanted to come forward once she realized that Chris Watts was cheating on his wife and children and that they had disappeared. But we know that a manager from Anadarko is the one that sent the emails to law enforcement proving that Chris Watts and NK were having a relationship. And I think it's more likely that she was tipped off by somebody that, alerted her that they had the emails, and that's why she suddenly felt compelled to come forward. And I say this because I don't think she felt any empathy or concern for Shanann, Bella, Cece, or Nico. If she had, she wouldn't have deleted the text messages. If she had, she wouldn't have tried to destroy her SIM card. If she had, she would not have told Chris Watts to pawn Shanann's wedding ring when he supposedly found it on the nightstand. So when law enforcement asked her about these deletions on her phone, her excuse was, I was just kind of grossed out by him. And she claimed it was because Chris Watts had lied to her. But we know that this is not true. She knew he was married because she looked up Chris Watts and Shanann Watts back in 2017, before she ever took that job at Anadarko. She knew he was married because they had an email exchange where they talk about him being married. We know she knew he was married because she said in the same interview that she told him to go work on his marriage in North Carolina. We know that NK knew he was married because she was Googling whether or not a married man would marry his mistress. She knew she was the mistress. And we also know that she was cold, pawning Shanann's wedding ring and also looking up Amber Fry. She Googled Amber Fry, who was Scott Peterson's mistress. But the difference between Amber Fry and NK is that Amber Fry didn't know that Scott Peterson was married. He told her that he had lost his wife, that his wife had passed away. So Amber Fry, until she saw him at a candlelight vigil, had no idea that Scott Peterson was married and that his wife and child had disappeared. But NK, she was looking up wedding dresses. She was looking up married man will leave the wife and marry the mistress. She was looking up Amber Fry's book deal and how much Amber Fry was worth after Shanann, Bella, Cece, and Nico had been done away with. She's looking up Amber Fry's net worth and Amber Fry's book deal. So even then, she's looking to cash in on all of this. And she has no alibi. Where was NK on August the 13th of 2018? Her phone pinged in the vicinity of the Watts home at 6 a.m. We know this because Jim called her. We don't know people have said, oh, but it was, after Chris Watts left. Well, we don't know how long she was sitting outside of the house. We don't know. We know that she wasn't picked up on doorbell cams, so maybe Chris Watts deleted it. But wouldn't Shanann have seen her on her visits to the house that she said she had with Chris Watts twice over the summer? Wouldn't Shanann have seen her come in on the doorbell cam? Or did Chris Watts let her in through the basement door or through the garage? So we don't know how long she was parked out, but we do know that neighbor Betty saw a little gray truck that matched NK's description at the house on November 13th of 2018, the day that Bella, Cece, Shanann, and Nico were all done away with. So what time, if NK didn't clock in that day at Anadarko, what time did she arrive at Anadarko? And did law enforcement verify with anyone her alibi? Because she was claiming Jim was her alibi. Did they check this out? Or were they just so anxious to get Chris Watts that they just gave her a pass? And I think that NK showed a lot of narcissistic traits. I'm using this as an adjective. I'm not diagnosing her. But I think that, the fact that she knew Shanann, Bella, Cece were all gone, and she's looking up how much Amber Fry is worth, just shows how self-centered she was. That Chris Watts should just pawn the ring. It just shows how cold he was, but also how cold she was. And then let's talk about neighbor Betty, what neighbor Betty told law enforcement about that little gray truck. She says she remembered seeing a little gray truck parked outside the Watts home in the hours leading up to the crimes. And we know NK drives a little red truck. So when you consider that information along with the phone pinging just after 6 a.m. on August 13th of 2018, and then you consider that she didn't clock in that day, she clocked out but didn't clock into Anadarko. Now the gray truck could be a coincidence. It could have been somebody else's. Maybe neighbor Betty got her days mixed up. But we don't have any information from law enforcement that they confirmed NK's alibi with Jim, that they confirmed that NK arrived to work at such and such a time, that they confirmed where she was at 6 a.m. that morning. And I just think the phone pinging combined with neighbor Betty seeing the car, that truck is just really sketchy. And then we have David Carter. David Carter, who was an inmate with Chris Watts at Dodge Correctional, also came forward. So this is a different inmate with information regarding NK. And the problem is that Chris Watts has told so many lies that there's no way for the prosecution, the DA, law enforcement to know what's true and what's not. But I think there's a reason that Agent Graham Coder and Agent Tammy and the other agent all went to Dodge Correctional and did that interview with Chris Watts. I think they were trying to see, because they didn't want the investigation to be over. They didn't feel like their work had been done. We know this from Tammy, Agent Tammy Lee. So David Carter was a former inmate. He doesn't have a lot of credibility either, because maybe he was just doing a cash grab to get paid for some interviews. Maybe he was going to try to get a book deal for himself. But he claimed that Chris Watts was receiving communication from Nicole Kessinger while he was in Dodge Correctional. He also said that authorities at the prison found out that Nicole Kessinger was communicating with Chris Watts and that they had suspended Chris Watts's email account. So again, I'm sharing this information with you with the caveat that I don't know if David Carter has any credibility, and I don't know if Chris Watts has any credibility. I think it would have been risky for NK to be writing Chris Watts in jail. So that's why I'm not sure I believe David Carter. But let me know if you have a different feeling about that. And we're going to talk about the bed sheet in just a second. But let me just say hello to chat. Come on in and tell me where you're from. Let me see. Let me back this up. I'm so behind on chat. And I'm so sorry we started late. I just really did not realize how much I was diving into on the Brian Kohlbergers. I still didn't get through it all. I still have more. So we'll anyway, thanks Dabs for coming over to tell and Jess for coming over to tell people. Marnie said, not so shocking, just the usual with these two. I don't believe any part of the Watts confession. Sassy T said, oh, thank you for telling them, Sassy T. Appreciate that. Hi, Princess Elsa. Brother Mike says, please get help in chat. Welcome others. Watch for trolls and give us a thumbs up. This is our head mod, Brother Mike, and our other head mod, Enjaz, and then our other head mod, Amelia, I haven't seen today. Hey, Penjam. So come on in. Tell me you're from. Thanks for modding today, Dabs. Juanita's here from New Zealand. Come on in. Tell me where you're from. Trina's here. Susan's here. Juanita's here. She says, he's blaming everyone, even his mother and Shanann. Yeah, it's Shanann's fault. It's everybody's fault except his. So that's why, I think he is, people were like wondering, why is he saying all this now? Why turn on NK now? And I think the reason behind that is that he feels like he sees, Scott Peterson, maybe, got his death sentence commuted and maybe he's going to get out. He sees the Menendez brothers trying to get out. So he feels like, well, maybe I can get a Netflix deal and get out myself. I agree, Brother Mike. He should be in prison. Top Cat said they both wanted his family gone, in my opinion. Yeah, I think it does make me wonder, what she knew and when she knew it. Why was she there that morning? Why did she demand pictures of him to be at Survey 319? She assigned people to go to places. So why would she, of that day of all days, suddenly want photos, proof of him being at Survey 319 that day? They restored her deleted messages. They got a lot of it. I don't know if they got all of it. Thanks for modding today, Pepper. I think they got a lot of them. I don't know if they got all of them. Dabs thinks she's just as guilty. Christy says she had everything to do with this, in my opinion. She should have left them be and not stalk Shanann. Yep. Juanita said her phone pinged miles away on her way to work, plus the cops checked her GPS, and she did go straight to work that morning. Do you have a source on that, Juanita? I would love to pull that up. Thank you so much for sharing that. Mike says, I agree she should be in prison. Juanita says, Martin Dehan has all the inside info that comes from Second Discovery Dump. I'm going to pull that up and see what I can find out. Thank you for that tip. Love getting tips. Brother Mike said, yeah, please help in chat. Please give this a thumbs up. Let YouTube know we're doing a G-rated show. Pepper says, according to the Discovery, there was a phone call between Chris Watts and NK. Every time NK's next phone call went to Jim. Is that a coincidence? Oh, wow. I don't know. Christy said, please hit that thumbs up button and subscribe. It's free. Pip Lover says, I think the Menendez brothers were a different matter. It was time when people didn't even think. Yeah, that's true. That's true. And when they were mocked when they finally broke about it. That's true. There is a stigma. There's a stigma for anybody to come forward. Even with, and we all heard about the Epstein, what is her name? Dufresne, Virginia Roberts Dufresne. And she's no longer with us. And, they still referred to her. And this really, does show you how, the stigma. They still refer to her as the accuser, not the victim. She's the accuser. And I'm like, what other crimes do we refer to the people as the accusers and not the victims? It's just so twisted. So I do agree with what you said about there being a stigma, for the guys. And I think it's just, it's the same for women too. How short is your skirt? What were you wearing? Even in the Idaho case, you're right. He changed the story so many times. Even in the Idaho case, I had somebody say that it was the victim's fault, Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan, because of how they dressed in their pictures. I deleted it because I couldn't believe it. And I'm just like, it's like time we let that go. Top Cat, the great analysis on the other cases, spurring Chris Watson. Yeah, I want to dig into this one, and I am digging into it. Christy says, I know he didn't want to be in the social media spotlight. He was tired of it. Yeah, he did look really upset. He did. And like a lot of the uh background of Shanann, he almost kind of looks like he's lurking back there. And the other thing I noticed is that he did play with the kids, but I never like saw like a lot of joy on his face with the kids, with Bella and Cece either. Hey Jewel. Sassy says, "Are you going to do to me what you did to Cece, Daddy?" That was just like the saddest thing. Oh my God. Yeah, that breaks your heart. Juanita said he only knew NK 6 weeks and destroyed his family. Yep. Yeah, please consider subscribing and give this a thumbs up if you are finding this to be helpful. Juanita said she did not get an immunity deal. I would love to see some evidence of that. I really would. I would like to see somebody come out and show me, because we have a lot of discovery that was never released to us. We never got Chris Watts's text messages released to us. Why? Why are his text messages being held? So I think there's still a lot we don't have. I would like to have it. I also think those two were Skyping. She said they were Skyping. And I want to know if there were any. You can message on Skype too if there were any messages. Sean said marriage and family is sacred. Yeah. NK and Chris Watts were both involved. I don't believe any narrative that they either try to put across. Top Cat said absolutely she gave him an ultimatum. I think she did too, Top Cat. Thank you so much to NJAS for the gifted reporter room membership. If you got that membership, please let me know who you are, and congratulations and welcome to the reporter room family. Susan, thank you so much for the $1.99 super sticker. Thank you so much. I am getting the computer. Brother Mike said the prices aren't coming down. Just get it. So I am going to get it. And thank you, Brother Mike, for the $1.99 super sticker. That is so nice of you. Thank you so, so much. I really appreciate that. Pip Lover says she didn't physically harm the victims, but I think she contributed. How do you not remember such a long conversation unless you're hiding something? Yeah. And why delete everything off your phone when there's such high stakes? Such high stakes. And so I'm not saying Chris Watts isn't culpable. I'm just saying I think, I would like to know more. I'd like to know what were his text messages. Why weren't we seeing hers? Why was that bed sheet left out in the open at Survey 319? Why didn't he put it back on the truck if he was planning to take it back to the house, or bury it? We know he threw the other bed sheets in the garbage at the house, and the sheets were off the bed when law enforcement came through with the body cam. But a lot of people have wondered if there was some type of insurance fraud scheme in play with Chris Watts. Was there an insurance policy out on Shanann? Was something more drastic supposed to happen at Survey 319? Why was he loading up that gas can on neighbor Nate's CCTV camera? And so agents Tammy Lee and Graham Coder did go to Dodge Correctional in Wisconsin in 2019 to interview Chris Watts. And they asked him about Shanann, and they asked Chris Watts. And he talks about we a couple of times in the interview. He refers to we. He said plural, we and our. And I don't know if he's talking about himself and Shanann or himself and NK. And then after reviewing all of the evidence, I just think that where we are is that there was either an immunity deal or law enforcement didn't feel like they had enough to indict NK with anything. That maybe, she was around there. Maybe she was shady. Maybe, but at least they could have gone after obstruction of justice, in my opinion. So let me move myself out of the way here. Let me know if you guys can hear this okay.
Like differences on how we saw things or just like open-minded about things.
Can you hear it? Yes or no? Just really quick. Yes or no? Can you hear it? Can you hear this? I just don't want to play the interview and then find out you guys couldn't hear it. Yes or no, really quick. Can somebody tell me if you hear it? Yes? Yes? Okay, that's great. That's fine. All right, let's continue on together.
It was actually, I personally thought it was kind of unique because usually most of the men that I've ever met are typically very closed off, and I didn't get that from him at all. But it was always like kind, very kind.
So no sense that this guy had a temper or
Not at
was aggressive, or he never lost his mind and yelled and said crazy stuff or anything like that. Okay.
No.
So can we just kind of go back to your relationship? You say you guys had a lot in common. What was that?
Oh, I mean, like we're both really into fitness. I think that's important. It's a lifestyle. Both of us ate pretty healthy, so I think that was important as well. He's like a total gearhead. He likes cars a lot, and I don't know nearly as much about them, but it's always been something that I've been pretty interested in. So we definitely talk about stuff like that.
And I think, in my opinion, she looked up Chris Watts. She found out what his likes were, what his dislikes were. When she looked him up, found out he loved cars, and became the ultimate girlfriend. You can't go sand duning because your wife is pregnant and you got toddlers, but you can have fun with me. Your wife may not like cars and car shows, but I love them. I think she became the perfect girlfriend, in my opinion.
And I guess he was always willing to like learn new stuff and vice versa. Like I like to travel a lot, and it's not something that he's done a lot, but he seemed like really interested in what I had to share with him and vice versa. So even if it wasn't something that we originally had in common together, it was just like, hey, I respect what you have to say, and vice versa.
So you guys just yin and yang. You got along pretty well.
Very well.
And no time, he never gave you an indication that
None.
that he was having issues. So during your guys' dating time, did you guys spend most of the time at your place?
Always.
Okay, always at your place.
Or we'd go out, but
And we know now that's not true. It wasn't always at her place. She was at their house, the Watts house, at least twice.
Mark yesterday, he asked me if I went over there, and I told him about one time that I went over to that house. I've been to that house twice, but it was very, very brief, and it was not like an extended stay. I did not feel comfortable there, or like I just didn't want to be there. It's not my life. Like that is somebody else's life and somebody else's existence, and I respect that. That's their space. And so I used to tell him, well, come to my house because this is our space. This is my space. And so for me, out of respect, just for like whatever situation he had going on and the fact that it's not my home, I felt that it was better to be in my place. And I live alone. I don't have any roommates or anything, so it's pretty easy to do that.
So during June and July, were you aware that his family was not his? Did you meet his children?
Nope.
During June and July.
And he didn't ask me to.
Okay.
I mean, not that I didn't want to ever. It was just not now. It's like you're not finalized with your separation, and not only that, we've barely been dating. Like you can't introduce kids to somebody new in a situation like that. That's something that takes time. I mean, would I have liked to have met them? Of course. That would have been a great honor for me to have somebody introduce their children into my life, but not then. It was something that it was like, okay, well, let's see where we're at in 6 months. Let's see where we're at in a year. And if we're still doing this and you and me are still, happy with where we're at, and you think that this is something that is going to be long-term and is worth bringing your children into the picture, then yes, I would love to meet them. But it's like, not right now. You are still in this situation where you're not even completely out of it, and I'm getting in it, and that's not fair for them. And that was kind of the policy that I had with him, it was just like, yes, but not yet.
So did he ask?
So that she just wants you guys, she wants all of us to think this was a policy that she had with him. Yes, he wants to meet the kids, but not yet. And that it was all out of respect for the kids.
Asked to introduce you to his children?
Not at that time.
Okay.
I think both him and I were on the same page of eventually, if things went as they should.
I understand you guys' relationship is very new and young.
Yeah.
So although it was short,
She is cracking every knuckle on her hand. I think
kids to somebody new in a situation like that, that's something that takes time. I mean, would I have liked to have met them? Of course. They, I mean, that would have been a great honor for me to have somebody introduce their children into my life, but not then. It was something that it was like, okay, well, let's see where we're at in 6 months. Let's see where we're at in a year. And if we're still doing this and you and me are still, happy with where we're at, and you think that this is something that is going to be long-term and is worth bringing your children into the picture, then yes, I would love to meet them. But it's like, not right now. You are still in this situation where you're not even completely out of it, and I'm getting in it, and that's not fair for them. And that was kind of the policy that I had with him, it was just like, yes, but not yet.
So did he ask to introduce you to his children?
Not at that time.
Okay.
I think both him and I were on the same page of eventually, if things went as they should. In
I understand you guys' relationship is very new and young.
Yeah.
So although
cracking
it
every
was short,
knuckle.
I just laying everything out helps us understand what actually was going on with him. And
Yep.
I might ask you a question and you're going, why the heck would he ask me that? Probably because I have information that I'm not willing to share with you. And I'll tell you that right now. I'm not going to tell you some questions I'm going to ask you. What the heck? I want to share some information with you. Just, it protects you. It protects our investigation. So if it seems weird, there's a reason I'm asking it.
That's
and
fine.
It's usually relative to what I know. So don't take offense to it. Again, it's just part of what we need to know.
Understood.
So just, you went to his house on 2 occasions.
Yes.
Was that recent?
No, that was like
So the agent, just so you know, was sitting right here, and this is her dad, which I don't understand why a grown woman had her father in there with her, but anyway.
pretty early into it, and I did not like it and did not want to go back.
Do you recall where the house was?
Yeah, it's like right off the highway in Frederick.
Okay. And you know the streets?
I mean, I'm sure I could figure it out again if I really had to. Off the top of my head, no.
Do you know the street name?
No.
Okay.
I would have to drive around in there to get there.
Okay. Did it look like
But she Googled the house, so she did know the name.
anybody else lived
She'd
at that
been
house
there.
at that
Oh,
time?
definitely.
Okay.
I mean,
So
the
is that
whole
what
thing.
freaked you out?
I mean, he told me that he was living in the basement, and he said, we're separated, but we're not divorced, and we're going to get ready to sell the house. And that was the impression that I was under. And I was under the impression that they were taking everything pretty slow with this, with getting ready to sell the house. I mean, those are big things. So that's what I was informed. And I mean, if you think about it, this whole thing happened in a 6-week stretch. It's not really that much of a time frame. So in that sense, it's believable to me. Yes, I went to the house, and the first time I was there, I hung out in their front living room. I just sat on the floor, and it was on the 4th of July. It was the morning of the 4th, and I was helping him to set up my MyFitnessPal app and track his food, his calories and stuff, because he does pretty good with the working out and stuff. And he asked me, he's like, can you help me just get this dialed in? It's like, yeah, I can do that. So
So she was already controlling what he was eating, his macros, in my opinion. She was showing a lot of signs of being very, very controlling. She was looking up apartments for him, just, counting his macros for him, putting apps on his phone. And
he invited me up to the house, and I was
just put a pin in the fact that she's sitting on the floor. This is what she's saying.
pretty kind of hesitant to do it because I was like, there are other people that live here, and I just felt like it was an invasion of space. And so I went up there, and we just stayed in that front room, and I helped him out with that, and got him all set up with that. And then, he asked me if I wanted lunch, and he grilled chicken and carrots. And then that's all he had. And I was like, okay. So we ate, and then I left. And then there was another day about, I can give you the date-ish. Let me look at a calendar. I think it was the weekend after my birthday.
Just a thing on the courtesy for the phone for, what was that guy's name, Don?
This gentleman,
Oh,
Thornton PD. I just met him today. Do
oh,
you want to do the
I
phone
forgot
today?
about that.
For TPD?
It's not for them. They're doing it for us.
Yes.
We don't have the equipment with us to do it. And I asked them to do it for us. They're not involved in this investigation. He would just be a computer person. he would not be looking at any of this stuff. That would fall to myself. So keep that in mind. He's not involved in this investigation. Thornton PD has nothing to do with this other than letting us use their facility and helping us with some electronic download. He's not going to look at your phone right now. He's going to put it on a disk and they're going to give it to me.
Gotcha. I don't know anything.
She does not want to give them her phone. Again, she knows that Shanann, Bella, Cece, that they're all done away with. This is on August the 16th of 2018, and she will not even give up her phone. And we know she's deleted a ton of stuff off of it, and she still doesn't want to give it up.
I really want to help you guys. I do. I feel like this whole thing is just going to be crazy regardless of whether I give you my phone or not. I mean, that's kind of how I look at it. Like, it's happening. It's going to happen.
Well, the text reiterate what you've been saying all along, so it's not like.
Well, they do. That's the other thing, too. I mean, that's kind of a good backup. Yeah, I'll give
I
it
think
to 'em.
you hit the nail right on the head. There's reasons why we want everything. It validates things that we know. I'm not going to come out and tell you that if you tell me something today, we'll validate it with your text messages, whether it's the ones we have now or the ones you're going to give us.
I'll give it
Certainly.
to 'em.
So in other words, if you're lying to us today and your text messages say something else, we're going to validate it. We're going to check it against your text messages to see if it's true or not true. So he's giving her kind of a shot over the bow, in my opinion, right there. Let me know if you guys have a different take on it. Let me check in with chat. I do want this to be interactive. Let me see. Tracy said, if NK did make a deal, does that mean she can never be prosecuted? My belief for the long phone call is that they both left their phones on calling each other, left their phones home, and dug a hole. Christine said, she's so fake, in my opinion. Monkey says, my theory is that you're on the wrong, this is not about Brian Kohlberger. You're in the wrong chat. Respect. Yeah, right? Just talking about respect. Hey, Debs. Pip Lover says, if she knew he was married with kids, then she should have stepped back and waited for him to file for divorce. Yep, or at least waited till he was moved out of the house. She said she didn't want it to be messy. But I think she didn't meet the kids because she knew the kids were with Shanann in North Carolina. And she's going to tell us here how she was so anxious for these two, Chris and Shanann, to work it out. And I agree with you. She just has no respect for anything other than what she wanted. And I agree with your assessment because of the fact that she wasn't turning over the phone. This would have been her chance to show she was going to cooperate, right? And instead, she's, I don't know. Should I? I don't know. Kioka says law enforcement dropped the ball by letting her have her dad present in the interrogation. He interfered with it. How many times can a knuckle crack? Well, she cracked every one on like crack. Like I can't even get mine to do that. Yeah. Susie thinks the lady does protest too much. Callie says, not sure why dad was there. I did, however, like it when he spoke up that she was hesitant on giving her cell phone to the officers. Yeah, he seemed like he was trying to, and she didn't want to give it up. Yeah, please give this a thumbs up. Let YouTube know we're doing a G-rated show. Shanann was controlling too. Yeah, she might have been. I mean, I just, for Shanann, I can understand it more because she had little kids in the house. So of course somebody has to be in charge. And I just feel like Chris was I think he was passive, but I think he was passive aggressive. Like underneath all that, he was seething. Pep says, Chris Watts doesn't seem like the kind of person who liked to be the one in charge of a relationship. Nope. I think he had a type and he picked that type. But I want to be really careful that we're not bashing Shanann because she's not here to defend herself. And I just don't want this to turn into like a Shanann thing. I know there are some people that have tried to blame her for what happened to her. She certainly did not deserve what happened to her. I'm not saying she was perfect, but the girls and Shanann, I mean, she was pregnant. She was trying to work it out with him. She bought him a book. She wrote him a letter trying to work it out with him. To me, she never cheated. She was faithful. You can say, okay, she was controlling. That's about the worst thing you can say about her. But maybe she had to be. Maybe she had to be. She had two little girls, and Chris seems kind of passive, even in his relationship with NK. Yeah, it's not like she's underage. Christy says, I'm not sure if Shanann was controlling. He was probably just acting differently after meeting NK, and Chris Watts is also a narcissist. Red flags, Kelly says. Princess Elsa agrees with you. She says she looks like she's sitting there deleting stuff. No, she's looking stuff up. So she deleted part of it. She tried to delete all of it. And she tried to destroy her SIM card. I mean, just really huge, in my opinion. Pip says, if you know your partner's family is missing, wouldn't you want to try to do everything you can to help? Red flag. Yeah. Well, she knew that at this point that they were gone. I mean, she knew at this point they weren't even, that it was worse than that. And she's still not helping.
If you want to go get him,
I want you to read this, is what I want you to do before you decide that, okay?
So the second time I went to that house, I'm not sure what day it was, but it was the weekend of the 14th.
Of August? July?
I don't know if it was the 14th or the 15th. One of those 2 days. But we had went out and we stopped there just real quick on the way back. And we were there not very long. But that time I saw a picture of his wife and one of his kids. And I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, she's so beautiful. And I took a step back and I was just like, this man has a gorgeous house. He has beautiful babies. He has a beautiful wife. He has an awesome job. Like, why would he want to leave this? And I remember talking to him about it. And that was the first time that I tried to actually say, what do you think about not separating from your wife? Like, what if you really try to work on this? And he had expressed to me that
I don't believe for 1 minute that she ever told Chris Watts that he should work it out with Shanann. I just am not buying it.
we've tried to work on this and it's not working. So that is why we're separating. And I spent some time just, kind of, because it almost made me feel bad, where I was to the point where I'm engaging in a relationship with a man who, the way he described it, is in a contractual agreement, but was not in an emotional relationship with somebody. And for me, the way I would have preferred to do this is to have waited till that contractual agreement was also done, and he was done. And he could have approached me and said, I'm just had a divorce, maybe we could take this slow. What do you think? But instead it was.
Then why didn't she? And why was she Googling wedding dresses in the days leading up to these crimes?
Oh, we're separated and we're working on a divorce. And that is the part that I feel bad about, because I should have waited on that and I didn't. And, I was just like, well, they're already there. So, but then being in a house, I was just like, why? Fix this. Find a way to fix this. Make it work, and I was trying to push him to do it. And he seemed pretty reluctant to do it. He didn't want to. And I don't know, we were still seeing each other fairly frequently, but I kind of that.
Just keep in mind, she's claiming she was pushing him to do this. But while he's in North Carolina, where he could have actually reconciled with Shanann, and Shanann was trying to reconcile with him, Nicole Kessinger was sending him explicit photos that he was hiding in a calculator app. She was sending those to keep him hooked in. And she took all of his phone calls. If she really wanted him to reconcile with Shanann, she would have just cut it off. She would have not taken his phone calls and just, told him it's over. It's done. She didn't do that. Said she's Googling wedding dresses when Shanann turns up missing and he finds her engagement ring, pawn it. It says she's Googling Amber Fry for book deal. What's Amber Fry worth? How much can I get out of this? What can I cash in?
Backed away, so we weren't hanging out quite as much, and we were still close, but it was just like I really wanted him to try. Like I wanted to know that he tried and it didn't work, and then he moved on, not that, you know, they both kind of tried and then he got himself into a situation with somebody else. And I don't know. I just thought he had a beautiful life going on and he could have made it work.
I believe her when she says she thought he had a beautiful life going on. I think she knew about this beautiful life before she ever took the job at Anadarko, you guys. Well, guys, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think about all of this. I do want to say thank you to our producers, and Jazz, Sasha Angel, George Brown, and Christy. Thank you to our channel members. Really appreciate you guys supporting the channel. If you would like to be a channel member and have your name appear like this in all of my live streams and also in my videos here on Reporter Room, please consider hitting the join button. But you can also subscribe. Subscribing is free and it helps me out a lot. And the join this channel membership is a couple of dollars, but it's definitely gives me some freedom to do this. I'm going to be doing another Idaho 4 case, and I'm also going to be doing a another Sebastian Rogers in the next couple of days, so be on the lookout for that. And thank you so much for your super thanks and coffee gratitude from the last live stream, and just for all of the gifted channel memberships. You guys are just so awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I do want to hear what you guys think. If there's anything you want me to check out, I would like to definitely check it out. I think there's a lot of deep diving to do in this case, and I do think that we there's just a lot to look at and to look into. So I do want to keep deep diving this. I do want to dig into this. I know for this channel, this is a newer case. I did do some other videos on this. I have a playlist. You can go through the Chris Watts NK playlist. And I want to say thank you to Mods R Us. Thank you to NJazz and to Brother Mike for modding tonight. Really, really appreciate you guys. And to all of our mods for helping tonight. Christy, also, everyone have a great night. Thank you for being here. Monkey says, Agent says he has info for her. Yeah. We'll continue to deep dive this. There's just a lot to dive into. There's a lot to delve into, and it's just not something I can just do in 1 or 2 live streams. And if you guys have something specific that you want me to look into, I learned a lot from reading your comments. Let me know, and I will continue to deep dive this. And I will see you at the next Chris Watts live stream, which will be in the next few days. So be on the lookout for that. See you next time. Bye.